Another rebel showed me he isn't actually armed at all.
It's a toy gun. This is amazing. He just handed me his gun. I didn't realize until he put it in my hands. It's actually just made of plastic. It's a toy.
That was NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel in Libya on the front lines with the rebels today. Today, American striker forces continue to take off from an American carrier in the Mediterranean Sea headed for Libya. And today, the first Arab warplanes join the fight. But just as the president says we're pulling back, more American forces are joining the fight. In my hometown of Norfolk, Virginia today, there were emotional goodbyes as the Bataan Amphibious Ready Group deployed ahead of schedule to relieve forces already in the fight. Joining us now is filmmaker Robert Greenwald of Brave New Foundation Films. Robert, good to have you with us tonight. You and I think, are probably on a different page here. I mean, I think Gaddafi's a terrorist. I believe he killed Americans. That's all I need to know. And I support the president on this. I think he needs the benefit of the doubt here. How do you see it?
Well, I see a series. First of all, Gaddafi is terrible, is a murderer, and has done awful, horrible things. The question, Ed, is when do we intervene? In which countries do we intervene? What is the price we're willing to pay? And I think there's a couple of fundamentals that we all need to think about, and it's not a simple issue. Number one, $1 billion. Do others think that we should be spending what looks like will be $1 billion on this intervention? Number two, the legal question. Is there any reason that the president didn't go before Congress and ask for approval? I mean, there's a reason that that's in the Constitution. It's to prevent these sudden, quick things from happening. And then the third and the most important one, I think, Ed, is military solutions to complicated political problems. How do you deal with tribal societies? How do you make our country more secure? And how do you actually protect civilians rather than make it worse for them?
So how do you figure the UN Security Council vote, the 10 nations that came together that wanted to do this, and 5 abstentions as expected, but the key is they didn't block what the other 10 wanted to do. I mean, this truly is a coalition. The French have got issues. The Brits are in it heavily. And the president, I have to say, has been very consistent and accurate that we're doing what he said we were going to do. Now, if he goes out of that realm, there's probably going to be some political ramifications, and he's going to be under a microscope politically on this. So why not go along with the way the president has it lined out?
Because I think we have to ask the question about, is there a military solution to this problem fundamentally, and are we prepared to spend these enormous sums of money, and what difference will it make? I mean, there's lots of reports, Ed, and I agree, we want the president to succeed, we want him to be successful, but are civilian lives being saved? And what is the toll it's taking on that footage you showed of Americans who are going over there now? And that's far from clear at the moment, right? I mean, we don't have all the answers by any means, but I think it's so important to ask the hard questions.
The hard questions are being asked by some in Congress. Do you think the president has to address the Congress and the American people?
Oh, absolutely. You know, going to war used to be like a really serious deal. Now that we don't have a draft anymore and we're able to use high-tech weapons, it's become far too easy. Not only does the president have to address Congress, he has to ask for their approval. We've asked for the Security Council approval. We've asked for other governments' approval. It's critical that he do that. And then what we should have, as Senator Webb and several others have said, we should have a debate in the Senate and the House. Do we want to go to war? Is military action justified? We've had no debate on this. That's a tragedy, whether you support it or you don't support it.
What about the humanitarian effort and the intervention in that regard? And setting all of this up is protecting those civilians with this military action.
Well, for sure, we all want to protect civilians as much as possible. The question is it in fact accomplishing that? As there was a quote in the paper about somebody in Libya who had said, we need an intervention that's around tanks and around snipers. We have virtually no Air Force. So it may not in fact be making civilians any safer going after the Air Force. But also, what about the number of civilian casualties? Again, I'm not passing judgment on that, Ed, yet. because it's too soon to tell. But we know there are civilian casualties. So some civilians who were going in to protect are being killed by the efforts, the mistakes that always happen in these situations. And that's why I would argue we must start to think of other solutions to save lives. We're not going to save lives by bombing people on occupying countries.
Robert Greenwald, I respect your opinion, and I've got a commentary coming up later on in this broadcast about how we find money for everything except our own people. Thank you, Robert.
There you go.
Good to have you with us tonight.